Hello, and welcome back to Umineko. When last we left off, we had lost 2 more people, and numbers are getting low. Until the very last moment, Jessica resisted moving into Grandfather's study. But in the end, Aunt Natsuhi persisted, and we decided to move there. Everyone was completely wrapped in paranoia by now. Kumasawa-san had prepared dinner at one point, but during the time we were discovering the deaths of George Aniki's parents, both the kitchen and the parlor had been left empty. Someone suggested that the food might have been poisoned while we were gone. Because of that, we were unable to even touch the food that Kumasawa had taken the trouble to make for us. The manner in which the first 6 were killed was still unknown, but it certainly could have been poison. Certainly, that would allow even a single person to carry out the murder of 6 large adults. Furthermore, this idea made it easy to imagine there being only a single culprit, one who'd been afraid of Aunt Natsuhi's rifle. And this was very good for our emotional stability. But the fatigue and hunger were even harsher than we'd imagined. Then Kumasawa-san made a proposal, and we all went together to the kitchen. There we gathered some canned food and other things that'd be hard to poison to take in with us. All of Kumasawa-san's efforts to reward us with just a little dinner on this savage day regrettably came to nothing. The food piled up on the serving cart looked just a little sad. We all started climbing the stairs. Aunt Natsuhi, who was in the lead, warily stared into the darkness with both eyes, and the barrel of the gun. Once we dragged ourselves up to the 3rd floor, just as Aunt Natsuhi had warned us of beforehand, there was a mixture of a chemical smell and a sickly sweet aroma, a stench hanging in the air that felt like it was eating into our heads. I see. This kind of stench would probably give you a headache if you were shut in with it for a whole night. I know it's a little late, but I'm with Jessica. I voted against going into Grandfather's study. It felt like the stench was floating out from this magnificent door. It was the door to the forbidden study, which should defend against any who would enter. While Genji-san unlocked the door, Maria stared at the door and the doorknob with great interest. Ooh, incredible door. It looks old and strict, like it'd stop any jokes cold. A perfect door for Grandfather's study. The power to ward off spiritual menaces is strong here. Beatrice probably couldn't open this door. Oh? What does that mean? Maria pointed at the doorknob. A scorpion crest. No, a design like a magic circle arranged around a scorpion was inscribed there. That design. That's right. Isn't it just like those keychain charms Maria gave Jessica and me yesterday? The 5th magical circle of Mars is a strong ward against magic. Additionally, this magic circle was very diligently constructed and is full of power. Such a magic circle can be quite troublesome to beings of magic, like Beatrice. Isn't that comforting? Are you saying we can escape even Beatrice's clutches in this room? Our little witch here sure is reliable. Then how did Beatrice get Grandfather out? Just as Battler reasoned. Beatrice can't go inside. However, she has both magic and familiars. Using them, she might have been able to get Grandfather to leave the study of his own accord. Ah, I've read about that in manga. I've seen a bunch of scenes where vampires were frightened of crosses, so they couldn't get close. But their familiars were just fine, so they made their familiars attack. Those scorpion keychain charms I gave you yesterday also had the 5th magic circle of Mars on them. The power dwelling within them was weak, but they should be enough to protect you until we leave the island. Although it sounds like you lost yours, right? Scorpion keychain charms. Yeah, the charm I gave you yesterday was something that I got from Maria. I heard it would repel magic if you put it on your doorknob. And at the time I thought maybe it would be better if you had it. Is that so? I thought it was an odd thing for you to be carrying around. Aunt Natsuhi put that on her doorknob? Yes. Last night, after hearing about it from Jessica, I hung it from the doorknob on the inside of my door. Then Aunt Natsuhi, you're really fortunate. If you did that, Beatrice probably couldn't even lay a finger on you yesterday. I think Beatrice must have been really annoyed. God. I think Beatrice must have been really annoyed. Beatrice, annoyed? Couldn't lay one finger? Natsuhi thought back on that eerie scribble she'd seen that morning, as though someone had been tearing at the outside of her door with blood-soaked hands, and gasped in surprise. Could it be that this witch who called herself Beatrice tried to enter through the door to Natsuhi's own room? But the magic repelling charm had been hanging from the inside, so she couldn't break through the door. So she was annoyed. So she scratched at it? Quit it, don't talk about that. Witches don't exist. The culprit does. And they're a human just like us. If you need proof, why don't we dice her up and see if her blood's red? Damn it! Damn it! How could you do that to Canon-kun? Click. Genji unlocked the door. 8 people entered Kinzo's study. Grandfather's study. I'd heard rumors about it beforehand, so I wasn't that shocked. He had done nothing more than fortify it thoroughly with his occult hobbies. If Grandfather's hobby had been chasing after pop idols, these walls might be buried beneath idol posters. Even if I didn't understand it, I did realize that this room was a bundle of all his pastimes. Even so, I couldn't help but remain dumbfounded by the smell of his creepy medicine, and the sweet stench that seemed to melt my head. When the door was closed, it automatically made a clunk. I see. This is the auto lock that's activated whenever the door is closed. And there were only 2 keys that could open this door from the outside, both of which were in this room. In other words, it had become a closed room. The shutter, the receipt, the chain, and now the auto lock. This 4th door had the most magnificent lock yet, and this was doubtlessly a closed room. Just to make absolutely sure that the room was secure, we checked all over for ways in or out. The window was tightly locked. That should have been enough, but just in case, we tried knocking all over the walls. After all, we had talked about there being a hidden door in this room, but we couldn't find anything suspicious. Grandfather's study was very large. Even though we called it a study, it wasn't really a single room. It could be divided up into 4 basic sections, a study section, a bedroom section, a toilet/bathroom section, and a section for cooking that had a sink. I see. This study really does have enough in it to live in. Now I see how grandfather could live his whole life in this room without ever leaving. It seemed grandfather wasn't in the habit of watching TV because there was no television or even a radio in this room. We can't do anything except pass the time listening to the sound of the rain until tomorrow morning. Dr. Nanjo looked closely at the chessboard that sat on the table in front of the sofa and muttered. It was apparently the partly finished chess match he'd been playing with It was apparently the partly finished chess match he'd been playing with grandfather until yesterday. The black had the white pretty well cornered, and it looked like checkmate would be reached within a few moves. The last part of the endgame. Even though checkmate had almost been reached, the endgame had been rushed, and in the end was never completed. Kinzo-san, it seems we weren't able to see this match through, after all. Dr. Nanjo, I was Kinzo-san's friend for a long time, but I never knew about more than half of him. I believe 2 Kinzos existed. A wise one, and one trapped by some madness. I never understood anything about him. Especially when it came to Beatrice-sama. It would seem like his personality changed. In the direction of Kumasawa-san's upward gaze, a portrait of Beatrice could be seen. It wasn't massive like the one hanging in the entrance hall, but small, made for this room. Grandfather probably spent every day in this room, and so much of his time, talking to the witch in that portrait. Who was Beatrice to grandfather in the first place? Right now, you couldn't just explain it away by saying it was a story made by the parents to frighten children away from wandering into the forest. While eating the canned food we'd brought from the kitchen, we talked together about who Beatrice was. Whether the culprit was Beatrice herself, or someone pretending to be her. Whether they were a witch or a human, that was besides the point. The woman in this portrait was strongly related to the roots and background of this case. You couldn't talk about this case without talking about her. That's right. Mom, you picked up the culprit's letter in Aunt Ava's room, right? Yes. I still haven't opened it. Let's give it a try. Aunt Natsu took out that western envelope. Genji-san pulled a paper knife out of a drawer in the study desk and handed it to her. While watching her open it, George Aniki grimaced slightly. After all, it was a letter left at the site where his parents had been murdered. There was a good chance its contents would say something unbearable to Aniki. Aunt Natsu also seemed to realize that. So she glanced over the contents first, without reading it aloud. We were a little frightened that she might grimace after reading something shocking, but she just frowned unhappily. What does it say? There is one unpleasant sentence. It must be trying to provoke us. Natsuhi, after deciding the contents could be shown to the children, set it openly on the table. Everyone stared at it at the same time. Praise my name. Is that? I thought maybe the sound was a tip or something being added, but I guess not. Praise my name. There was the sound of the actual thing being added. I didn't remember that. I was just... Well, do what the woman says. What the hell? That's annoying. It's probably Beatrice declaring herself the victor. Damn it. I'll bet you were hoping another weird magic circle would show up. It wasn't a magic circle, but my expectations haven't been betrayed. Kihihihi. What could it mean? I wonder if she wants to tout her own existence. That seems reasonable. With this letter, we now know that the author of last night's letter is the culprit. I think the identical envelope is more significant than what is written here. Without a doubt, this is the type of envelope and sealing wax that the master used. Oh, I don't know what's going on anymore. This is the first time I've seen anything like this since I started working for the Shiromiya family. Going by last night's letter, Beatrice is claiming to be grandfather's oldest confidant. Grandfather often said the same thing in the past, right? I spoke to Genji-san and Kumasawa, Kumasawa-san, who nodded together. Guess that means you two know more about her than anyone except grandfather. Could you tell us? For a long time, I've purposefully avoided this topic. But now that it has come to this, I can no longer do so. Genji, tell us everything you know. Genji-san didn't answer. Did he remain silent despite his knowledge? Or did he know nothing at all? Still, I had a good guess. The ghost story of the witch Beatrice had long been deified among the servants. He had probably been very close to grandfather and his occult hobbies. So there was a good chance that he'd been indoctrinated with even weirder things, and had increasingly come to deify the witch. As grandfather's most trusted servant, who had sworn loyalty to him, he might be the most influenced by the illusion of the witch that grandfather had created. So there was only one reason for Genji-san to remain silent. He could speak, but it would definitely cause a backlash, so it was better if he kept his mouth shut. And it wasn't like we'd believe him anyway. Something along those lines. A short while ago, Maria had been more than willing to speak bluntly and unrestrainedly, and that had earned her a scuffle with Jessica. It was natural for Genji-san to keep his silence. Was she father's concubine? His concubine? That could be possible. For ordinary poor people, polygamy isn't only viewed negatively from a moral perspective. It's also an unmaintainable financial situation. That isn't the case for the very rich. It's possible for them to have another lover in addition to their real wife. We can't deny the possibility that grandfather had another woman in his life besides grandmother. Maybe. When grandmother was alive, I hear she was pretty sure of it. She thought he was cheating on her. I always thought she meant grandfather's imaginary witch. Now this is getting really interesting. You told me, didn't you, Genji-san? You said Beatrice has been working for grandfather since before the mansion was finished. I heard that the construction of the mansion was completed in Showa 27, 1952. That'd mean this person called Beatrice was in a relationship with grandfather since at least 30 years ago. Could that concubine of 30 years ago, or maybe a relative or hidden child with that person, hold some kind of grudge and be planning revenge? I see, this is starting to sound just like your standard Western mansion mystery. It's a filthy topic, but the easiest line of reasoning to accept. What do you think, Genji? The master surely had feelings of deep love for her. There can be no mistake that he cared for her more than his late wife. Who is this person called Beatrice? And what's she doing now? I have heard that she passed away before the mansion was completed. She's already dead? Yes. The master was deeply stricken by grief at her loss, and he devoted himself to the art of black magic as a means to revive her. The master loved Beatrice Sama from the bottom of his heart. It was that madness which drove him to do all that you see here. As Genji-san said this, he spread his arms, as though asking us to look at this room, filled with the signs of grandfather's madness. We were all at a loss for words. Normally, black magic seems like it'd just be creepy, and it's really hard to imagine why someone might be so enraptured by it. Since Kinzo was just an eccentric who had restored the Ashuramiya family amidst his madness, nobody had tried to understand him. The only thing on grandfather's mind had been the loss of a beloved woman, and his inescapable sorrow. Earlier, this room had seemed creepy, but in an instant, it had changed into something we could understand completely. The creepy books, the magic circles, the medicine, all of it. It all existed simply because he wanted to revive the face of a single woman who had left this world over 30 years ago. The master only told me about Beatrice Sama's story once, when he was very drunk, although I have forgotten the details. It was a deep, deep love, enough to make a woman like me jealous. When Kinzo-san succeeded the headship of the Ashuramiya family, his marriage to his late wife had already been decided by the few surviving family elders. So, he was forced into a marriage with some woman who would benefit the Ashuramiya family? That is correct. Kinzo-san was installed as the head who would revive the family, and had to bear the entirety of that heavy responsibility. I do not pretend to know the details of when or how Kinzo first met her. Guess it'd be rude to say any more than that. That was when grandfather truly fell in love for the first time. Just how deep was his affection for her? That was easy to see just by looking around us. This room was covered with piles upon piles of things having to do with black magic. And grandfather spent every day shut in here, immersed in his research, and isolated from the outside world, never regretting 1 minute of it. You couldn't help but recognize the depths of grandfather's love for Beatrice. I had it all wrong, Genji-san. What do you mean by that? I've always thought that maybe you servants believed blindly in the witch because you were influenced by grandfather's creepy black magic hobby. But that's not how it was, right? By acting as though Beatrice's soul, at least, had been restored, and existed inside this mansion, they might have hoped to soothe grandfather's heart. With closed eyes and the expression of one remembering something from the distant past, Genji had broken his long silence. In making that confession, He probably felt like he was betraying his one and only master in the most serious way, even though that person was already dead. Beatrice has revived as a witch, and she is in the mansion, even now. Genji had said it, had believed it, had made people believe it, and would take that with him to the grave. This might have been the last service he could offer up to his master. The legend of the witch, the mysterious tale of Rokkenjima that was still whispered of amongst the servants. Its true nature was a sad lie. No, it was an act of kindness towards grandfather, who had lost the person he loved above all else. I remember denying the witch's existence in front of father on multiple occasions. Now I finally understand how much of that must have wounded him. Right now, I can understand very well. If I thought I could revive Shannon using black magic, I'd immediately become the next owner of this room and start researching. Anarchy. Another strand of tears dripped from George's eyes. Maybe his tears were infectious. Tears rose to Jessica's eyes too. She sniffled. Beatrice has said it. Very soon, she will be able to revive people. You'll be able to meet them, she said. Very soon, the door to the Golden Land will be opened. In the promised land that glitters gold, the souls of all the dead will be resurrected, along with the love that has been lost. Then I will sleep in a world of peacefulness for all time. Did she say that? The Beatrice who gave you the letter? You don't believe, do you? If only grandfather were here. I'm sure he'd be happy. I'm sure he'd be jumping for joy now that Beatrice is about to be revived. In that case, I believe. If grandfather gave up half of his life for this research, trying to resurrect the soul of the woman he loved, and spending the rest of his life believing, I'll believe too. Battler. When you love a single woman for so long, the people around you catch onto it, and it becomes the truth. Maybe you could say they're just being polite for the sake of your feelings. But right here, now, I'd like to call that magic. It isn't just being polite. It really is. Magic. She's a witch. It looks like nobody can see Beatrice after all. Some time passed. As we listened to the sound of the rain, we considered what kind of love and madness must have possessed the owner of this room, as he spent half of his life here. If you ask me as a woman, then while I'd like to be understanding of father's feelings of true love, it did leave mother in an awkward position. I agree. Cheating is cheating. No way to make it pretty. Yeah, that's right. Gotta feel sorry for grandmother. So, have there been any rumors about a child between Beatrice and grandfather? The keyword Beatrice has been hidden in every corner of this case, so it's natural to suspect some relative of hers. No, I have not heard of anything like that. If there was one, a memento of his most beloved person, he surely would have given them all of his affection. Since he ended up immersing himself in black magic instead, maybe we should assume that there was no such child. Come to think of it, that reminds me of a rumor I heard. You know it, right? That story about how grandfather heavily supported an orphanage called the Fukuin House? Enough of that. That is nothing more than slander, which would desecrate father. Tell us that, Nazi. I think even you'd agree that this is no time to hide things from each other. It's a worthless story. Father made massive donations to an orphanage and had the orphans employed as servants at the head family to give them some on-the-job experience. The story in question is simply some drivel spread by fools who claim that father was using those orphans for some filthy hobby. For a while, some guys even said that he was collecting human sacrifices for his black magic. And he really is doing weird experiments and ceremonies in this room all the time, so I half believed it myself. And these servants who came from the Fukuin house are... There are several of them, but Shannon and Cannon were the two scheduled during the family conference shift. To resurrect Beatrice, he brought in servants from an orphanage as human sacrifices? After all, everyone grandfather selected as a servant was young, about the same age as Shannon or Cannon. I'm sure it was because grandfather had some bizarre hobby. Jessica, mind your words. When Aunt Natsuhi scolded her, the atmosphere instantly went sour, and everyone fell quiet. However, something was tugging at the back of my mind. Sacrifices. Human sacrifices brought over from an orphanage. What is it? Freaky words like sacrifices don't pop up often. And yet, I've seen or heard that word recently. Some part of my memory is tugging at me. Hey, Beatrice. What do you know? I had arrived in front of the portrait of Beatrice. It wasn't as massive as the one in the entrance hall. But that portrait, which must have been drawn by some famous painter, was still just as intimidating in this smaller size. Below it, just like in the entrance hall, was the epitaph that supposedly hinted at the location of the hidden gold. Ah! Sacrifices. Here. What the hell, Battler? You're creeping me out. 6. Sacrifices. Ah! Both of my eyes were as wide as plates. Everything's been predicted, right there, from the very beginning. Everyone crowded around, and the same expression of shock rose to all of our faces. That's right. It's right there in the epitaph. On the first twilight, offer the 6 chosen by the key as sacrifices. There's no doubt. 6 people died in the beginning. And even on the shutter, when the magic circle was drawn, no, where the Hebrew was written, it mentioned the offering of sacrifices. Ooh, I've been saying that from the beginning. That's right. Maria said it right at the start. Right after we found the 6 bodies, when Maria was in the parlor watching TV, she said it. Ooh, the culprit isn't human. It's just the sacrifices chosen by the key. This has nothing to do with the location of the hidden gold. It's the instructions for a resurrection ceremony, using black magic or something. After all, this epitaph requires a large number of deaths. It sure does. Even reading through it quickly, there'd be 6 plus 2 plus 5. 13 people who must die. How many people are normally on this island? It changes depending on the shifts for the servants. But there's father, my husband, Jessica and me, and 2 or 3 servants. Today and yesterday there were 5 of them, but there aren't normally that many. Which means that normally there wouldn't be enough sacrifices to carry out this ceremony. No, wait. There's that rumor that grandfather was collecting servants from an orphanage to be used as sacrifices in some creepy ceremony. So what does this mean? He increased the number of servants to increase the number of sacrifices and waited for the annual family conference when even more people would gather? Isn't now the only time of the year this ceremony could be held? When Jessica screamed this, Maria broke out in that creepy laugh, looking truly pleased. Haven't you ever heard of people making bets to test their fate? Like throwing a sandal and saying that if it lands right side up, tomorrow will be sunny. Or saying that tomorrow will be a good day if a coin lands heads up. There are many little superstitions like that. Sometimes, when your luck is down and you get bored, and you roll the dice and get 3 6s, you want to believe it's a portent of some miracle. When flipping a sandal, you have at worst a 50% chance. Even if you get it right side up, it's not worth much. But if you carelessly roll 3 dice and they all come up 6, you might think that's a small miracle. Magic works the same way. You must pray earnestly for an extremely unlikely result. Then, the feelings from all those stored up prayers gain magical power and become incarnate. The magic that grandfather was trying to perform was probably like that. The key randomly selected sacrifices in a lottery. So, to reduce the chance that he himself was selected, he chose the day with the greatest number of people on the island to carry out the ceremony. Ridiculous! Are you saying that this entire situation was caused by a mere ceremony for some bizarre magic? Natsu yelled. She couldn't quell the fear that a scorpion charm might be the only reason she was still safe. If I hadn't received that charm from Jessica and hung it on my doorknob, would I have been killed, mixed in along with those 6? And the strangest part is, even though I hung the charm from the inside of my door, they couldn't get through the door. The culprit noticed the charm from outside the door and gave up trying to open it. A human couldn't have perceived that. A charm meant to stop something that was not human had done exactly that. Impossible, impossible, impossible. But Natsuhi-san, the epitaph certainly does continue to fit, even after that. On the second twilight, those who remain shall tear apart the 2 who are close. Could this be talking about Eva-sama and Iriyoshe-sama? Painful as it may be, we must reach that conclusion. And after the culprit killed them, they left the words from the third twilight in a letter there. That's right. After carrying out the second twilight, they left the third twilight in that place. The third twilight was just like Aunt Natsuhi read. On the third twilight, those who remain shall praise my noble name. If you read it this way, it just keeps going on, doesn't it? On the fourth twilight, gouge the head and kill. Gouge the head and kill. George Anaki's parents were killed with those demon ice picks gouged into their heads. But if they were the second twilight, someone else must have been gouged in the head. That's grandfather. He was burned in the incinerator and our eyes were so drawn to that part that we didn't notice. But his forehead, no, his head had been gouged. Grandfather was the victim of the fourth twilight? Then Kanon-kun was... On the fifth twilight, gouge the chest and kill. We thought Canon-kun's case was an unexpected encounter with the culprit, but that's wrong. From the very beginning, they planned to lure someone out alone and drive something through their chest. If the culprit has followed the epitaph this far, does that mean 3 people still have to die? On the 6th twilight, gouge the stomach and kill. On the 7th twilight, gouge the knee and kill. On the 8th twilight, gouge the leg and kill. Yes. You could read it that way. Yep. Well, I wonder about that. After those 3 die, it reaches the 9th twilight. Take a look. On the 9th twilight, the witch shall revive, and none shall be left alive. We're all gonna be killed by Beatrice. I don't get it. Wouldn't that mean everyone dies no matter how many people there are? What was grandfather after? Doesn't this mean the ceremony would kill him too, no matter what? It's okay if no one's left alive. On the 10th twilight, we finally arrive at the Golden Land. On the 10th twilight at journey's end, you shall attain to the power of the Golden Land's treasures, once and for the last time. The witch shall praise the wise and bestow 4 treasures. Grandfather wasn't afraid of dying. Look at the 2nd and 3rd of the 4 treasures. One shall be the resurrection of all the dead souls. One shall be the resurrection of the love that was lost. So grandfather believed he would eventually be revived, even if he died partway through this ceremony? Ridiculous! That's insane! When you die, it's over, right? The dead don't come back to life. Isn't that a miracle humanity's been chasing after for thousands of years and still hasn't accomplished? So is this what it means? Something like you'll be able to meet them in the afterlife where they'll be restored? If what you're saying now is right, would that mean that grandfather, whose remaining life is slim and who's been driven mad by love, is committing suicide? No, a massive forced group suicide? Genji, is such a thing possible? I don't know. The master is a man who sometimes has the wisdom to see 1,000 years into the future. However, there are times when that appears to be nothing more than madness to commoners such as myself. Okay, should we take that for a yes? What do you say, Kumasawa-san? I don't know anything. That's right, I don't know. Do you think I would be on this island today if I did know? I would have faked an illness or done anything to take the day off, that's right. What about your opinion, Dr. Nanjo? You've been grandfather's friend for many years. I feel the same as Genji-san. Kinzo-san was a man who far surpassed ordinary people. I've even felt a sort of inhuman power from him at times. Even I don't know what Kinzo-san was thinking when he wrote that epitaph. All we can say is that if father did write this script, someone else is carrying it out. That's right. At the very least, there's another culprit who attacked grandfather and Canon-kun. Furthermore, that person is still continuing the crimes just as the epitaph says. The letter in the beginning that we didn't think deeply about. What was it that was written there? We thought back to that recitation of the letter last night. Beatrice had proclaimed something inside it. She had proclaimed that, according to her contract with Kinzo, she would collect everything of the Ashuramiya family as interest. But then she had also revealed a special clause. If someone discovered the location of the gold grandfather had hidden, that right would be lost. When the letter was read, grandfather was still alive. But at that time, it had already been sealed with wax by the head's ring. Which meant grandfather had handed the ring over to Beatrice while he was still alive. If we take a straightforward approach, maybe we should assume Beatrice is carrying out that strange contract, with grandfather guaranteeing her that right. In other words, this was the same as saying grandfather knew of and approved of the contents of that letter. In other words, it's basically a joint message from Beatrice and grandfather, telling us that Beatrice will start collecting interest if we don't solve the riddle. In other words, grandfather and Beatrice were demanding that we try and solve the riddle of the epitaph. And if we couldn't, they were saying that the massacre would be carried out according to the epitaph. What does that mean? What do they want? I don't have a clue what it means. Look, another letter from Beatrice.
Huh? What did you say?
Maria was pointing at the top of the table, where the canned food everyone had been eating just now still lay. A Western envelope from Beatrice certainly was sitting there. But so what? What in the... Aunt Nancy let out a hysterical cry, looking between her own hand and the table. Because the envelope she had just opened was still grasped in her hand. So why is there still an envelope on the table?
What the hell? What's going on, Maria? Where did that envelope come from?
Just now. I looked and it was lying there. Who?
I don't know anything. This isn't funny. There's only the 8 of us here. There's no way some 9th person snuck in. There wasn't enough time during the few seconds that we were gathered around the portrait, right?
Get back, all of you! Back against the wall! Aunt Nancy was pointing the rifle at Genji and the others, bellowing at them. Genji-san was overpowered, his face looking like he didn't have a clue what was going on. Of course, I felt the same, but a few moments late, I reached the same conclusion Aunt Natsuhi had. Until just a few seconds ago, there had been no letter like this on the table. And nobody entered this room. That means somebody among us placed it there during the few seconds when everyone was looking away, preoccupied with the portrait. Battler-kun, open that envelope and read what's inside.
Sure.
I picked it up. It was still sealed with wax. Even without disturbing its contents, I realized that this was an as yet unopened envelope. An unknown envelope. Without relying on a paper knife, I tore it open and pulled out the letter inside. The contents were as follows. Are you enjoying the riddle of Kinzo-sama's epitaph? As you are all probably aware, you have very little time remaining. Please abandon any naive hopes of escaping after the storm passes. This game can only end with my victory or yours. When time runs out, I will win by default. There will be no ties. Make sure that you do not misunderstand your current situation. Let me check, but I assume that sound was the third letter.
That's what it says.
It isn't clear who put this letter there. However, I have been able to narrow down the list of suspects. It's you all! Madam, that's just too horrible. Just before I moved towards the portrait, I set a can of food down here. At that time, there definitely wasn't anything as strange as this letter there. And at that time, Jessica, George-kun, and Battler-kun were already in front of the portrait. And they didn't leave the spot in front of the portrait until the letter appeared. So the person who set that letter down is one of you four. Beatrice is here. Ew. We aren't Beatrice. Beatrice exists. Silence! I don't know whether I should suspect one of you or all of you. But without a doubt, at least one among you is the culprit.
That's right. There can't be a 19th person. There's no way witches exist. Even when Kanon-kun was killed. Yeah, that could be explained if Kumasawa-san was the one who did it. The truth is that Kumasawa-san entered the boiler room with Kanon-kun and killed him. And then she lied, saying she had already fallen when she had got there. You're making a mistake, milady. Why would I do something like that? I don't have the slightest idea how my parents were killed in that closed room. But when they were killed, everyone except for the servants had an alibi. The only ones who didn't were the servants. But does that really mean it's okay to suspect them? Yeah, now that you mention it, they have no alibi for any of the cases.
Should we really be so quick to make that judgment? But this time, in this room, in this place, in this moment, in this minimally small bit of time and space, it's obvious. Only one of the four of them could have set the letter there in our blind spot. We can't tell who put it there, but it's obvious that one of the four did it. Natsu-san, please calm yourself. A lot has happened today. I understand how much strain is on your mind right now. Dr. Nanjo, it truly pains me to call you suspicious. However, you are father's personal doctor and his closest friend. You have been by his side for many years, and you might even know about Beatrice. Could you be hiding some kind of old obligation? Of course not. Calm yourself. It was pitiful to watch Dr. Nanjo frantically pleading his innocence. It was probably a normal reaction that anyone would give if they were suspected. Kumasawa was the same. Ever since Jessica voiced her suspicions of Kumasawa murdering Kanon, Kumasawa had been totally flustered. That was why Genji's still calm appearance looked so bold. Aunt Nancy pointed the barrel of the gun. Genji, you were grandfather's #1 subordinate. Was Beatrice an illusion you showed to father, with you as the performer? If by suspecting me, you recognize me as the master's greatest servant, then I count it as a great honor, regardless of the circumstances. However, I am not the one who put the letter there. Do you expect us to just accept that? You must be the ringleader. Maybe Kumasawa and Dr. Nanjo are your accomplices. And Maria-chan too. Not content to suspect just the adults, Aunt Natsuhi pointed the gun relentlessly at Maria too. But Maria acted as though nothing had happened. Or maybe she thought she would be fine, even if she was shot. Maria-chan, by this point we can no longer remove someone from suspicion just because they're young. So for the last time, let me ask the question that everyone's had since last night. Yesterday, who was the Beatrice who handed you that letter? Yeah. Maria, don't dodge the question. Make it clear. Who gave you that letter? How many times do I have to tell you? It's Beatrice, the 1,000-year-old golden witch. If you want to know what she looks like, just turn around. See? She's right there. Beatrice is.
Don't mess with us, Maria! Enough, Jessica. Maria, too. Don't you understand the situation? What are you hoping to gain by saying stuff like that? Stop stirring each other up pointlessly.
I don't understand. Who do you all want the culprit to be? You only believe in Beatrice when you don't want to suspect one of your own. When you're trying to settle a grudge because someone who's close to you has been killed, only then do you want to believe in a human you can attack with violence and deny Beatrice. That's why you can't see her. Beatrice exists. You all can't see her.
Silence! I don't want to label you as the culprit, but there is no longer any doubt that you enjoy making this situation unpleasant and are providing assistance to the enemy.
Then what will you do? Shoot me? I don't mind. Very soon, the door to the Golden Land will be opened. Then, all the dead will be resurrected. Right now, death is nothing to be afraid of.
Mom, she really is suspicious. We can't keep her with us.
But Aunt Nazi, please, calm down. There's no reason to shoot Maria. Please remain composed. The letter was meant to provoke us, but it's nothing to be afraid of. Even the culprit is scared of what will happen tomorrow. They're scared of the police. Right now, this island is free from the reach of the law, but that's only because it's isolated by this typhoon. Once the typhoon passes, the law will return, so you mustn't shoot.
How can you stay so calm, George Nissan? One of these four is the culprit. No, maybe all four of them are working together. How can you stay so calm when one of these four might be the culprit who killed your parents?
Even I have the desire to find the culprit and kill them, but that would be simple barbarism. I will leave the judgment of crimes to the law, so no matter how suspicious they are, you mustn't pull that trigger.
I feel the same as George Anarchy. Aunt Nazi, get a hold of yourself for a second. Anyway, it'd be bad to shoot. In times like this, I hear you should tilt your head back and say, "Stay cool," 3 times.
Let me make this clear. Witches don't exist. Not on Rakajima, not in the Ashuramiya mansion. I declare it as an Ashuramiya Natsuhi, representative of the Ashuramiya family. There's no witch here. I won't accept Beatrice. No matter what you're planning, I won't let you lay one finger on my daughter or the rest of them. That's my duty as a mother and as representative to the family. Those words were the final words of farewell that settled everything. To protect her daughter, Aunt Natsuhi would regard any suspicious person as an enemy. The only reason George Anarchy and I were standing on this side was because, by coincidence, we had a clear alibi regarding the letter. If I hadn't approached the portrait, I would also be at the other end of that gun barrel, treated like a criminal. But even though part of me thought that, part of me was thinking that chasing all the suspicious people from this room would finally guarantee our safety. Genji-san and Kumasawa-san and Dr. Nanjo. All of them were on grandfather's side. Maybe you could say that once Maria started blindly believing in Beatrice, she was also on grandfather's side. That's right, they're all suspicious. But is this really okay? If we throw out all of the suspicious ones in such a lawless way, will we still have the right to defy the lawlessness of the witch? Aunt Natsuhi didn't tell them to leave with her own words, but with wordless pressure, she induced them to say that themselves. Because if Dr. Nanjo didn't say those words, this cold silence would surely continue forever.
Calm yourself, Natsuhi-san. Still, I understand your feelings well. I myself feel like there's something wrong with my head after all of these strange repeated incidents. So I understand well why you want to suspect us. If you really have nothing to do with this, then my actions now would be beyond rude. However, please understand just this once. Very well. Let's leave the room. What do you say, Genji-san? Shall we return to the parlor and continue our chess game? If that is what you wish, by all means. I don't want to. After all, that means we'll have to leave this room, knowing that the wolf is among us, right? I don't want to. Madam, please forgive me. Eek.
It was obvious what Kumasawa-san was trying to say. If she was innocent, then she was being ejected into dangerous territory along with the culprit. In the current situation, urging her to leave this room along with the suspects was almost exactly the same as letting her get killed. However, Kumasawa-san really was suspicious just for being the first one to discover that Kanon-kun had been murdered. At that time, everyone except Kumasawa-san had an alibi. Unless we could prove the existence of some contraption, or the existence of some 19th person, Kumasawa-san was by far the most likely suspect. I didn't want to believe it. However, Aunt Natsuhi and the rest of us were in such a difficult situation that we couldn't help suspecting her as well. So we didn't say anything to stop Aunt Natsuhi from trying to oppressively chase them from the room. We had stopped her from shooting, but we were passively agreeing to chase the others out of the room. On top of that, Maria spoke to the fretful Kumasawa-san. It's okay. Beatrice is kind to those who respect her. You believe that Beatrice exists. So it'll definitely be okay. I'll watch TV in the parlor. Let's watch it together. It's so boring here, without the TV. It looked like Kumasawa found Maria's roguish laugh very frightening. However, the three other people had agreed to leave the room. Kumasawa couldn't fight the flow and had to agree, crying as she went. Well then, Natsuhi-san, that will be all for tonight. Let us meet again tomorrow. Yes. Please understand, at least for tonight. When the police come, all of us will surely apologize for our rudeness. You may play chess, but do it in a safe place if you can. Genji, I leave them in your hands. Certainly. Oh, it can't be helped, can it? They always say that the most frightening bears are those with their children. Genji, Kumasawa, my sincere apologies. Let us meet again tomorrow. Maria-chan too. Please forgive your cold aunt. I forgive you. Madam, the keys to this room. I will hand both over to you. Genji-san pulled 2 golden keys from his pocket and handed them to Aunt Natsuhi. And I will also hand over my bundle of keys to the inside of the mansion. He took out a bundle of about 10 keys of various shapes and handed it over. To the servants, those keys were probably proof of their position. Being placed in charge of those keys meant that they were trusted, relied upon. When they were forced to return them,
it meant they had lost that trust. Thinking about it this way, to Genji-san, who had worked here for a span of many years, there could be no greater shame. However, Genji-san's usual indifferent expression remained on his face. Genji, I had planned that, after father passed away, I would reward you for your many years of hard work and allow you to retire. To treat you like this makes me feel ashamed from the bottom of my heart. I have already received the master's favor. Everything I have done until today has been in repayment for that. Please, do not worry over it. Well then, shall we, everyone? Good night to you all. Ooh, good night. Good night to you too, Battler. Ooh. Maria, wait a sec. Knowledge of guilt made me call Maria back. I groped around in my pocket and took out that scorpion keychain. This repels magic, right? Wear it. Oh? Didn't you say you dropped it? Back then, I got ticked off and just bluffed that I'd lost it. There's no way I'd lose the precious charm you gave me. Maria silently took the charm. I was unable to say anything after that. Well then, everyone, good night to you. We watched them leave, our expressions completely worn out, and we weren't even able to respond. Until the door closed and we heard the auto lock, we were unable to breathe. Then we were finally allowed to take a breath. After that, I noticed that Beatrice's letter, which I had been gripping the whole time and which was soaked with my wet sweat, actually had 2 sheets. The paper had been tightly stuck together, so I'd mistakenly thought that there was only one. There was no characters on the second sheet. The thing drawn there was a magic circle, written with a red ink like blood. Just like how every magic circle up until then had been different, this magic circle was one I'd never laid eyes on before. Inside the circle, a large triangle and a small triangle were fit together in a simple design. But just as before, there was writing in Hebrew, and it seemed clear that it held some kind of meaning. I wanted to know what that could be, but we had just chased Maria, the only person who could understand the meaning of magic circles, out of the room. I thought of this magic circle as Beatrice's second message. What does this magic circle mean? Damn it! After chasing out all the suspicious people, all we had to do was stay barricaded here until morning, and everything would probably be over. Once the typhoon has passed, when the seagulls cry, will everything be resolved? But the letter, which had unexpectedly appeared in the study, forced us to reject that naivety. It had made it very clear that, if time ran out, it would mean the witch's victory. When time runs out, is the witch planning to take on the offensive? This time, is she planning to display some fearful magical power? Maybe something that could have been used to kill 6 adults at once? Wait, when is time supposed to run out anyway? I don't know anything. With this, we should finally be safe. Finally. Definitely. Even as she said that,
Aunt Natsuhi couldn't stop gripping that rifle. There was no release in the tension of her expression. Of course, none of us felt like breathing a sigh of relief. At least, not until we could hear the cry of the seagulls once more. And that's going to do it for this episode. We leave off at 11:30 p.m. I have a feeling we're very close to the end. And I want to be able to do the whole conclusion in one go, which I think will be next time. So, see you then.